Make sure to start our recording. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first grant management session of September. Welcome to September. Welcome to our grant management question and answer session. As you probably know, most of you, I'm Michelle McNamee from DNRC. I'm the Arpa program manager here. And basically what we do in these sessions is we go through a couple of updates and announcements for our program, and then I'll talk through a few things and we'll open the floor up for questions and answers. As usual, we don't have a huge crowd with us here today, so there's just a few of you attendees. So if you have any questions at all as we're speaking, feel free to raise your hand and or to put something in the chat or the Q&A, and we can answer you as we go. So this is meant to be relatively informal and hopefully just an update for you folks on where we're at and some smaller changes that we're implementing and have made to our program. I think our biggest kind of exciting announcement, at least at DNRC, is that we've got 2 new grant managers joining us that started on Monday. So we're really excited to announce that. Some of you, well, if you've been on our calls, you'll recognize Catherine Sertalik. I'll say her name correctly now. You'll recognize Catherine Sertalik. She was our admin, and then just on Monday, she started as a grant manager for us. So Catherine, she started her video. So we haven't yet assigned Catherine any grants yet, but as I mentioned last grant management training session, we do anticipate doing that here in the next week or so. So you may see some of your grants transition over to Catherine or to our other new grant manager, Seth Steyer. Seth joined us on Wednesday as well. He came over from Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, so he's new to DNRC, but he's going to be a great resource as well, a really great addition to our team, both Catherine and Seth. And similar to Catherine, he just started Monday, so we haven't assigned him any grants yet as he's getting up to speed, but I anticipate doing that here in the next week or so, and then you'll see them sort of phase into managing perhaps some of your grants. I'm not quite sure yet where we're going to assign them, but it'll at least start to alleviate some of our workload and distribute it to a few more people, which is great. So hopefully we'll be able to provide you all better customer service as we move forward, since we've been just, I'm sure at least a couple of you have had times where you think, oh, it's taken them a while to get back to me, and that's just because we've got a lot to do. So we've appreciated your patience and really look forward to having Catherine and Seth start to work with counties, cities, towns, conservation districts, water, sewer districts as we move forward. That's our big announcement. I wanted to actually give, on that same note, I was going to give Alicia a chance to introduce, there's a couple new staff at the Department of Commerce who are working on the ARPA program. So Alicia, would you mind just introducing them? Because I don't think we've done that yet. So folks, if they get contacted, know who those people are.
Yeah, definitely. We've had 2 new ARPA program specialists start recently. One, you may know, we've been all working with her at Bear Paw, Susan Brurid. And then just this last week, we had Tina Salazar start, and she'll be our other ARPA program specialist. They'll both be remote out of Havre. However, they are very responsive to emails, and I can put their email addresses in the chat. They will be, within probably the next few weeks to a month, taking over all of my responsibilities with ARPA. So you'll be seeing a little less of me and more of them, which is great.
Thank you, Alicia. And that's just an opportunity in front of some other folks to say a big thank you to Alicia so far for all the work that she's done for us. As you know, Commerce's role has been to provide assistance and technical assistance during sort of the application period of these grants. So and Alicia in particular has not only done that, but she's been really helpful on our grant reviews when we were doing reviews and scoring and all that stuff. So without Commerce, this program would not be nearly as successful as it has been. And with the addition of Susan and Tina too, that'll be really great to have that continue. So thanks to Alicia and to Commerce for all of their assistance. DNRC, we do some of that assistance during the application period too, but our focus is more on the overall programmatic, running the program kind of overall, as well as specifically the grant management side. So that's just for anyone who's wondering, I always feel like people probably wonder what are different, what's the difference, who's doing what. So that's what the difference is here. So anyway.
Thank you, Michelle. We will miss working with you.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. Yeah, Alicia, you've been so fantastic. But I know we're in good hands with Sue and Tina.
Indeed.
Okay. So those are our staff announcements. Really exciting though that in both cases we're both Commerce and DNRC have got another position or two to bring and to provide more assistance to communities. I think today we don't have a ton in terms of updates, so I won't belabor the point. I won't go on too long, but I did want to talk a little bit more. I think first what I'll do, seeing who's actually an attendee, first what I'll do is just talk a little bit about some changes we're making to folks who are coming in for what we're calling minimum allocation grant increases, or who are coming in with county resolutions for a city or town to sort of take over their minimum allocation grant funds. So we'll talk a little bit about a change that we have to that, an improvement, I think I should say. And while I don't have anything to show you guys yet, coming next week, what we're getting together is for anyone who is requesting, so say you as a city, town, county, already have a minimum allocation grant for a project, for a water project, for example, and you've decided, or your commission has decided that they want to add more funds, more minimum allocation grant funds of yours. Say you've got, you still have 100,000 left in your city's minimum allocation grant funds, and your commission has decided, hey, let's add that 100,000 into the project we already have, into the minimum allocation grant we already have. Let's just increase that and close out the balance of our minimum allocation grant essentially. And so we've got a lot of requests for that. A lot of people saying, hey, we already have a minimum allocation grant. We still have minimum allocation funds left. Can we just add those in? And the answer is yes, of course you can, especially before November 1st, our minimum allocation application deadline, you certainly can do that. And the method by which we've been doing that so far is kind of through email, and we ask you to send us budget forms and submittable, and it's just a little clunky. And so one thing that we're implementing next week that we're getting together this week is through submittable. Again, this is for folks who already have a minimum allocation grant. So you've already, applied in submittable, and you've got your submittable submission for that grant already. What you can do now is you can reach out to your grant manager and say, hey, we want to essentially increase the amount of MEG funding in this project. And then what she or he will do is send you an additional form. So through submittable, send you a form, and that form will just ask you some basic questions about, essentially, how much do you want to increase your minimum allocation amount, and run you through a few more things. And so that way, we'll have an easier way and ask for those budget tables, and give you just a little more guidance. So that way, we'll do it through a form, so it's just a little more formalized and clearer about what we're asking for. And we've got actually a record of it in the grant submission itself. So, and long story short, all to say is look out next week, in the next week and then beyond, if you're looking to do a minimum allocation grant increase, we'll have you reach out to your grant manager, and then we will have you fill out a form and submittable for that. And you'll upload budget tables and do it that way. And remember too, one of the nice things that's new and submittable now is that you can add a collaborator to that additional form. So if you're working with an engineer or someone like that, and you want them to upload the budget tables for you, you can add that person as a collaborator, and they can certainly do that. And again, I'll show you when we go, as usual, I'll switch over to the website soon here to show you some stuff. And one thing is we've got a video on adding collaborators to additional forms and kind of that expanded feature that Submittable has. So that's something to look out for. Similar to that, we're going to use an additional form now too. So we'll send a form out. If you're somebody you're a city or town who's got an ARPA award for a project already, and you want to increase, and you've worked with the county now, and the county has minimum allocation funds available, and they say, hey, we'll give you $100,000, and in fact, we'll pass the resolution. So that way you'll apply for those funds, you'll manage those funds all on your own, city or town. And so the city or town in that case, again, if they've got a minimum allocation grant of their own already awarded to a project, they've got a submittable submission for that project already that they manage, they can reach out to their grant manager and say, hey, I've got a county minimum allocation, I've got county approval for minimum allocation money of theirs. And they can ask, and we can send a form that they'll just upload the county resolution to, and just a few other additional pieces of information. So that way, what we were saying previously on this one was that we'd have the city or town have to come in and fill out an entirely new application just for that county's minimum allocation funding. And now we're saying, if you've already got a minimum allocation grant awarded to a project, the city or town, you don't have to refill out a whole new application for the county minimum allocation funds. You can actually just submit, we'll request and we'll send you, and you can submit a form on the submission you have already to essentially add in those minimum allocation funds from the county. Again, you'll need that county resolution, but that's the gist of it. So I know that's probably all. It's a lot and it's kind of quick. So again, reach out to your grant manager and work with him or her about if you're a city or town and you've got a county resolution, about what you'll need to do. And he or she will tell you, hey, I'm going to send you a form through Submittable, or actually in this case, since we're already contracted, we're going to do it a little differently. So it'll still be kind of case by case dependent, but just know that that is something that we might have to do. So we're just trying to make a lot of these processes a little more streamlined, but also a little more formalized, because both this sort of idea of increasing minimum allocation funds or adding county minimum allocation funds to city and town kind of came up organically as we've grown the program, and we've realized the need to for us to kind of have forms so we can track it a little better and things don't fall through the cracks, most importantly. So that's a update on those two things. Again, no huge change for you all as subrecipients in terms of the initial process on any of this is to reach out to your grant manager, and he or she will walk you through what we need to do and how we're going to do it. Great. And then the other topic, that's my first topic. The other topic I wanted to cover again, and we touched on this at the end of the last question and answer session briefly, had to do with budget narratives. I kind of threw out a teaser, I guess, calling it a teaser like it's something real exciting. But I kind of threw out at the last question and answer session that by this question and answer session, we would have some more materials available with regard to budget narratives. You'll recall if you were here last time that we talked a bit about budget narratives and the importance of those. Those we ask for in the application for any of our grants, any of our ARPA awards. And actually, it's very common in any grant program to see that. So we ask for budget narratives on our grant applications. And one thing we've been seeing, especially as we kind of get closer to the minimum allocation grant deadline, as we're doing flood response irrigation grants, as we're sort of paying a lot more careful attention to the applications that come in because we have a sort of hard deadline coming up. We're seeing that that our budget narratives, the budget narratives that are being submitted could use improvement. So we're often sending them back and we're saying, hey, can you provide more information? Can you do this? Can you do that? And that told us that, hey, we need to actually provide more guidance on our website. So I will share my screen and show you what we've uploaded as of today. So starting today, we put on our website a few things to help out with budget narratives. Here's our website as usual. This is our ARPA Water and Sewer Grant website. You can get here by going to arpa.mt.gov and clicking on, there's a water and sewer icon to take you to this main page. When you're on this page, right now, those kind of tools sit in our tools and resources section, which if you're on kind of any of these pages or any of the pages above, if you scroll to the bottom, there's a blue bar and there's a looking for training. And it's got a little tool and wrench. So this is our tools and resources page here, and that's where you'll find it. And under tools and resources, I mean, I suggest you look at this anytime you're about to write an application or do kind of anything with regard to applying. Certainly come over here because there is a lot of new information that we post here. It's a repository for like a lot of the guidance and things we put together. And as we mentioned today, our new piece of guidance is that budget narrative. We put together a budget narrative guide, and we've put together a budget narrative help video. So you'll see here, again, I should orient you a little better. Our tools and resources page, it's got on the left side, it's got a bunch of these kind of trainings and recordings that we do live, that we record. And then on the right side, we have kind of guidance documents for applications. We have some documents that are more specific just to minimum allocation grant applications. And then the last section here is help videos that we've recorded. They may not have been live sessions, but we've recorded them in kind of tutorials of how to do different things. And you'll see at the bottom is the newest one, which is how to write a budget narrative. It's a Zoom video, so it's got a passcode associated with it. So you'll click on this, it'll open Zoom, prompt you to put in a passcode, which is this ARPA 2022 ! So anyway, that's definitely check that out as you're thinking of writing an application, or if you've got an application in progress right now, please do watch that video. And then accompanying that video, we have a budget narrative guide. So accompanying that video, we have a budget narrative guide. It's actually placed in both sections of both just kind of general application documents, and I did put it down in our minimum allocation grant documents too. So these are the same one either way. And what you'll do is you'll click, and it's just a PDF. It's 9 pages long, so it gives just quite a lot of detail. I'm obviously not going to go through every section and read you line by line, but we really, really encourage folks to look at this document. Basically, kind of the basics of a budget narrative and why it exists is that we need to see in your application, and this will feed into if and when you're awarded funding from us. So it is important for the grant management stage as well. We need to see from the start of your application how you're projecting your budget, so how you're calculating your numbers. So remember our budget table 1, we asked for 2 budget tables in your application. Budget table 1 is a funding package. So it's essentially answering our question of, you know, what funds are being, how much are you asking for and what funds are being brought to the table as match. That's what budget table 1 funding package does. Our budget table 2 is just our general budget table, and it's the one that itemizes, you know, what material cost is, and organizes it by funder, right? So it says, you know, what materials cost is going to be, what construction cost is going to be. So these different kind of tasks underneath your project. What are you going to be requesting in engineering, in audit, in grant administration? So that's what that budget table 2 tells us. But along with those 2 items, what we require is a budget narrative. And the budget narrative's role is to essentially interpret those budget tables and say how you came to those numbers. And if you've got multiple funders, kind of where, you know, a little more information about what what the different funds are going to pay for. So that's what this document is written to provide, is that kind of type of how you detail that information to us, because that's what we're missing. We're seeing budget narratives across the board of people just sort of generally discussing, hey, for construction, we're going to do this. We're going to, you know, put in water main, and we're going to put in this much more service line. And that's how we, you know, and it's going to cost $30,000. That's not exactly what we're looking for. What we want to see more is an itemized kind of a rationalized explanation of, you're going to have $30,000 in construction. What's the breakdown of that? How did you get to that $30,000? You know, service line replacement is going to be, or service line extension is going to be this much. Water main replacement is going to be this much. And this was estimated from what? From a quote or from, you know, what have you. So here you see, for example, administration is kind of the most obvious one. Grant administration is where we see a lot of trip up. Of course, if you have an external entity who's doing grant administration, and they know their costs and they can project out how much that's going to be, it's relatively simple if you've got an engineer, for example, who's doing your project administration. But or who's doing grant administration. But if you're saying that your own entity is going to do grant administration as match, for example, then, you know, we need to see the type of justification of who's going to do the grant administration, what's their hourly rate, how many hours are expected on this project, you know, that sort of thing, and what type of work are they generally going to be doing. You know, here you see under example 1, it says tasks, you know, this is an example, but it says tasks will include, and it gives examples of tasks that the grant administrator is going to do for this project. You know, track project costs, compile reports, all those sort of things. So that's the level of detail and the type of information we're looking for. And again, the whole reason we want to see this, and the reason this is important in grant administration in particular, is because before we get a contract in place, this is how we understand what we're going to be eventually reimbursing you for. So if there's some sort of a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation of what you think grant administration means versus what we think grant administration means, then we may have a problem when we go to get a reimbursement and you say, oh, here's all of our costs for grant administration. And we say, well, we don't consider that grant administration, and that's something we can't pay for. So that's just where we want to be able to be clear, so that we're able to ensure that everything that you've got in a budget is eligible, is something that we could reimburse, something we could consider match. That's number 1. And then number 2 is we want to make sure you can meet your match requirement and that you can provide us the proper documentation to do so. One big thing with grant administration too is, hold on. Okay, well, hopefully this doesn't happen yet. I just got a notification. My computer's going to restart, but it says I have 14 minutes left. So at least we have some time. Anyway, so Yeah, another really important thing too is we can tell the type of documentation that we're going to be getting from you when it comes to the time of reimbursement or you showing us something as match. A big miscommunication with grant administration is, or in any of these cases with any of these task items, is that you can sort of estimate them. If you want to use a percentage, that may be fine. You can say, hey, we estimated grant administration at 10% of the project cost or something like that. You can justify things that way. And that may be okay, and that may be fine. But when it comes to actually your budget, you're going to need to then give us direct costs and give us real costs based on the actual hours that somebody actually spent. So we need to actually see a list, for example, of positions and employee names, their rate, and the amount of hours they worked per day on a given project. Again, this is specific to if you're doing in-house grant administration. If an engineer or somebody else is doing grant administration, they're actually keeping that record, on their end, and they could be audited for that. So they've got that information, and they might just roll that up into an invoice for you. That's okay, or into a quote for you. That's okay, as long as they're able to provide that detail of information if audited or asked. So anyway, just a plug to please read through this document. If you're applying for a grant, if you're applying for minimum allocation, it's 9 pages, but it goes through each category that we usually see on our grants at ARPA, and it asks you for what we need in the funding, in the budget narrative. So it actually says we want itemized personnel, we want a brief explanation, we want a description of budgeted costs, that sort of thing. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out too, with regard to that is, again, you kind of have the big question of why. We've had a lot of people sort of say, well, I'm just going to, I'll just submit something and you can, and that's okay. I just need to get this submitted and DNRC can tell me what I need to fix and I'll fix it. So if my budget narrative's not that great, at least they'll tell me what to do. And that is true. I mean, that's something that obviously when we're reviewing grant applications, we'll come back to you, especially these minimum allocation applications. We come back to you with a laundry list of items and say, we need the budget fixed in this way. We need the budget narrative fixed in this way. But just a heads up on that is that we're only getting busier with these minimum allocation applications. The amount of applications is growing exponentially, and will do so until November 1st, our minimum allocation grant deadline. And I just want to have people keep in mind that these applications, there's kind of two deadlines with regard to minimum allocation grants. There's not only that November 1st deadline, so you all as applicants or folks as applicants have to apply for their minimum allocation grant funding in submittable by November 1st. So that's number one, and that's the most important for you all. But another thing to keep in mind is that we at DNRC, in order for those funds to essentially get awarded, we at DNRC need to certify those minimum allocation grant applications that you send in by January 1st of 2023, so by the end of this year. And so what does that mean? What does it mean that we need to certify them? That means that we need to work with the applicants, whatever applications we have by November 1st. We need to work with everybody to try and get their application in a state where we can certify it. We can say it's eligible, it's complete, it has all the information we need by January 1st of 2023. And if we can't do that because we can't get enough information from the applicant, we can't get a budget narrative, for example, that meets our requirements, then sorry, my computer's just popping up with all sorts of lovely things for me to look at. But anyway, if we don't get application certified by that time because we weren't able to work with you sufficiently or work with the applicant to get sufficient information on an application, then it won't go forward to the commission. It won't be certified in time. And those minimum allocation funds, you know, at that point, they would be, they'd go into our competitive grant pool fund and would no longer be available as minimum allocation grant funds. So that's just to say that it's in your best interest, any applicant's best interest, to really work now and work proactively on getting as complete and as correct of an application as possible before submitting to DNRC, because although you can submit an application by November 1st, really the deadline where there's kind of the really cut and dry of you'll either get your minimum allocation funds or you won't, is that DNRC needs to work with the applicant, with you, to certify that application as eligible, complete by January 1st of 2023. And if we can't do that, I mean, we'll do our best and we'll work with you as hard as we can. But we're going to get a lot of applications in. And if we're not able to get enough information between November 1st and the end of the year, then unfortunately, those applications that aren't certified at that point will not move forward. And those funds that they were requesting will get moved over to our competitive grant application pool, and we'll start to fund projects that we weren't able to fund in round 2. Okay, so that's my big update, and I think I'll leave it there for a couple of reasons. I apparently only have 7 minutes remaining before my computer shuts down. So I do want to leave time for any questions, but those are the updates that I had for this week. And I'm happy to take any questions now with regard to any aspect of grant management or what we discussed just now, or just anything you have that may be relevant. Our next IAC meeting, I think, is scheduled. It isn't scheduled yet, but I think it's going to be somewhere around the 24th or something of September. So
We're looking
we're
at
working on.
Sorry, we're looking at the 22nd of November. I think we haven't, like
22nd.
Michelle said, we don't have anything set in stone yet, but 22nd tentatively.
Of September. Yeah.
Yep, that's correct.
All right. Awesome. 22nd of September. Yeah. So look out for that. Keep looking on our website for that to be updated when we have a final date, but it sounds like that might be it. So just a heads up there. So if you've got an application, we're still working to get some certified in time. As I mentioned, we're getting a lot more applications now. So it's taken us a bit of time to certify these and move them forward. So thank you. Just be patient with us, and we're trying to work on that. So that's the next IAC meeting. Then next grant management training session will be in 2 weeks from now, which is, I mean, it's September 15th probably, right? Based on math. Yeah, on September 15th. So that'll be our next session that'll be your next of these sessions. I'll post this recording on our website, or Catherine will actually, as soon as we can after this. And I think that's everything in terms of those sort of wrap up pieces. Is there anything else, any questions, anything I didn't cover from anyone at DNRC or Commerce that has come up recently that folks want to discuss? Okay. Oh, we got Robbie. I'm going to allow you to talk here, Robbie. Thanks for raising your hand. Okay, I think you can unmute. Go ahead.
I thought I could do this more quickly if I just talked instead of typed something. So, and I apologize because I haven't been attending these all the time, but I think the big question we have on our minds right now are, we have some counties or even a couple towns that are looking at wanting to put culverts in and utilize their MAG funding. And I think we've run into some misunderstanding about what is what that is. And I'm fine if somebody just wants to call me and talk to me about that separate from this meeting.
Yeah, I do suggest that you talk to, I mean, even the grant manager in your region, but there are three basic things with regard to culverts that we require. One is that they're a part of some sort of a stormwater management plan. And so it doesn't need to, I mean, so we just need to see some sort of a plan within, with regard to how these culverts are aimed at addressing stormwater, and how they were, you know, purchased and installed with best management practices regarding that. So we need to see there is some sort of a concept or a planning document for the stormwater management related to whatever culverts are going to be put in. The other thing that we need to see is that there was a consideration of climate change and the effects of, you know, climate change on upsizing culverts or whatever might need to take place as a result of that. And that can be within that planning document too. And then the third thing that we need to see with regard, that we need to see and be assured of with regard to culverts is that they're a plan for where they're going to be located, where they are located if you're doing a retroactive reimbursement, where they are located, where they're going to be located, and then that those culverts will not only be purchased, but installed, fully installed within the project period. So those are kind of the big piece items. So it is something doable. It's not that we can't do it, we can't pay for it, but we just need to be assured that they fall on, that they're specifically related and fall under some stormwater management plan or design or concept. We need to just see some detail related to that on the application. What we've seen on culvert applications thus far is just a real lack of detail with regard to those aspects. We've just seen, hey, we're going to put in culverts, and generally they're in this county. So we just need to see a lot more detail as well, so that we can make sure that those requirements, because that's really where our funding can cover culverts, is with regard to specifically stormwater management and addressing climate change. Does that help, Robbie?
It does. It does. Can you still hear me? Yeah, you can.
Yep.
Yeah, that helps. I guess I'm not real clear on what kind of a stormwater plan, but maybe just a description of why they need to go where they need to go.
Yep, and I'm gonna promote Autumn, because Autumn will give you some more.
Okay.
Here, go ahead, Autumn. Yeah.
Hi, and thanks for letting me jump on. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, Robbie, there's no like specifics on what type of stormwater management plan, you know, we would require, obviously, but you know, essentially whatever. So if you're putting it in for a county and they're looking at county roads and they're like, you know, we need to put this culvert in to address runoff from this ditch or something like that, right?
Right.
Essentially, like there's a number of reasons to put culverts in roads, and most of them involve, you know, moving stormwater. Some of them don't. And so we just need to make sure that these are like, you know, stormwater culverts, not like culverts for, you know, access, or culverts for other utilities, things like that. So what type of stormwater management plan? I mean, I'm sure that the county has a road maintenance plan in place and a map of all the culverts in the county, and a designation that these are culverts for stormwater. Gotcha. And then the best management practices that Michelle was describing, and this is straight out of the federal guidance. Again, this is that the design of the placement of the culverts, you know, has best management practices in consideration. So like how the culverts are set in the road, the, you know, slope of the culverts as they're set, the sizing of the culverts, the orientation to the road, improving the drainage before and after the culvert, things like that. There's a standard set of best management practices that the federal government uses for culverts. And counties, so I think some counties have those. Some counties may not. But when you think about sizing a culvert for flows and locating that culvert and how that culvert is set in the road, those are the types of best management practices that we're looking at.
Okay.
And then also if there's a culvert maintenance issue, a lot of times counties will have a document that guides them on how to maintain culverts. Basically we don't want to, undersize culverts, given that we do have more flooding. We want to make sure culverts are appropriately sized, appropriately placed, and that they're factored into these like increased flow issues because of climate change. So that's word for word kind of the federal guidance right there. Okay. So whatever that looks like, Robbie, I don't know. I mean, when I was at the Forest Service and I did road stuff, we had a stormwater, management plan that was generic for our roads.
Right.
So yeah, it really does depend on the road material, the slope of the road, the orientation of the road, the distance to surface water, all those kind of things. And, we've all seen, culvert horror stories out there as you go by and you see ponded culverts that are being, undermined by water, that kind of thing. So how are the county, and for every county, it's going to be different too. So.
Yes, certainly that some counties are going to have all that documentation. Some counties are going to have none. So,
right. But I mean, the other thing that we got a, application in for culverts, and it was like missing a map, like a detailed map of where those culverts were going.
Okay.
And,
right. Okay.
And like what size they were and, all this other kind of stuff. So it was like, we got a laundry list of culverts that were replaced, but we didn't know like where, pictures, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's going to take a little work to do culverts, but, it's not like a PER for culverts, but we just, like where they are, what size they are, how much they cost, and then what BMPs went into the design and installation of those culverts, how they were sized, for example. And again, are they conveying stormwater?
Right.
So,
yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Autumn, for chiming in there and adding some more detail. I always feel like
Yeah. And I guess the one thing is that I was hoping there was a standard set of BMPs for culverts out there for roads. Mm-hmm. And there are, but they're for federal agencies. And because the feds, the Forest Service, BLM, land management agencies do have best management practices for culverts and erosion, things like that. The state doesn't, maintain a BMP handbook, but I know some counties do. And so I don't know if it's worth even like reaching out to other counties that probably have one and seeing what they use. Again, how did you pick that culvert size? Why did you put it there? Is it, conveying water, that kind of thing. So.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay. An update for anyone keeping track. I did get kicked off, but my phone fortunately stayed intact. So are there any other questions or anything like that? Catherine, I know you can see the chat and everything. Any other questions? Anything else?
Not seeing any more hands raised.
The only thing I was going to add, Michelle, is for that budget narrative that you went through, that can be done in either a document or an Excel spreadsheet. And so we'll accept both because they both kind of get to the whole point. And in that budget narrative guidance, it has two examples of two different projects, one in a narrative format, one in a table format. And so as you walk through that guide, you can figure out which one works best. And I think that we'll have that Excel posted so people can download that and use it if they want. So.
Yeah. And thanks for reminding me about that. I did mean to scroll down to the bottom and show the actual examples that the guide has. So yeah, that is part of those 9 pages. Is at the end there's actual examples for you to look at, and then guide kind of templates you could follow if you wanted. One being an Excel sheet, and then one of the tools that's not yet on the website, just because we don't awkwardly have the capability of posting an Excel sheet ourselves, is that we do have that Excel version available for you to just sort of plug and go if you wanted to. And so I'll get that. We have to just put a ticket into our IT to post that. So I'll get that posted, and hopefully they'll be able to get that up and then within the next week. So if anybody wants to use kind of the Excel plug and go template to make a budget narrative, they could do that as well. I mean, you could also just take a look at what's there and make your own too. So again, you don't have to use those examples or those templates, but obviously the guidance is there because that is the type of information we're looking for, and those are good ways to organize that information.
And in the meantime, too, if anybody really has a burning desire to get their hands on that spreadsheet, we can just email them a copy too. So
yes. Yep, that goes for anything, of course, on our website in general. But yeah, certainly with that, just reach out if there's something you're not finding that we've talked about in these training sessions, or you thought we said, and we can just send it to you or send you the link if it's on our website. Great. Anything else from anyone? DNRC, Commerce, or any of the folks who are on the line?
I was going to throw out one last reminder is to use the bookings opportunities to set up meetings with us. I've been seeing those tick up a little bit, but I also still get a lot of requests to like, hey, can you meet? And I'm like, hey, there's a link that you can set up a meeting with me and bypass the whole back and forth of, are you available? So I would share screen, but I'm not actually even a panelist, but I think it's on the bottom of the grant management page. If you scroll all the way down, you see the
no. It's the blue. Remember, there is a blue button on the top now. So if you go to our grant management site, which is that main ARPA water and sewer web page that I showed you, it's the on the top right. There is a couple different pages you can go to. One of them is grant management, and then there's a blue button right at the top below the page header. And in blue, it says, click here to schedule an appointment with a grant manager. So you can click that. Seth, our 2 new grant managers aren't in the system yet, although Catherine may be, just because, she has been with us. But anyway, they'll get in there soon, and then the rest of us grant managers are in there. So yeah, do use that. And then I know, and if you're not sure who your grant manager is, of course, just reach out to any one of us and we'll tell you who that is. And then I was going to say, a lot of us grant managers too have a link to that booking site in our email signature now. So I know I do, and at least a few of the others do as well. So if we email you, you can just scroll to the bottom of the email and we have some sort of a link, say, schedule an appointment with me or whatever. So if we send you a funny email and you are like, oh gosh, I don't know what to do here, you can just click that link and schedule either a 30-minute or an hour appointment with us. And it's just a really good way for us to organize our time rather than necessarily trying to catch us by phone, just because we do have a lot going on, a lot of meetings, and it's just, yeah, good plug for that. It's a really nice tool that we found really effective. Thanks, Autumn. That was a good reminder.
Yeah, it's a super handy tool. I really like it. So I keep wanting to plug it.
I do too. Yeah, I do too, especially because if you're one of my subrecipients or you work with me, sometimes you might feel like it's hard to get a hold of me by phone. In fact, I don't even want to say sometimes. You probably feel like it's hard to get a hold of me by phone. So if you want to talk to me by phone, that's really the best way for me. That's the most effective way for me because, you know, I'm running around and sometimes at home, sometimes not. And that's just a great way to do it. So, and I know my other grant managers, they may be more available by phone, but they feel similarly too. It's just nice if you've got a topic you really want to discuss with us. That's a good way to go.
My last question before everybody goes, is there any topics that you guys would like us to cover at one of these grant management sessions? You could pop it in the chat or Q&A.
Is where I'm blind right now, so I can't see anything, but it is.
Nothing has come in yet.
Yeah, go. Okay. Well, and just a plug there, just email one of us, or of course, we always have our generic DNR ARPA at mt.gov email box that you could always send any topics to. So any of the grant managers or DNR ARPA at mt.gov. If you have a topic that you're like, man, I keep running into this, or, you know, I keep getting this question from some of my clients or the communities, and I wish I knew more. We'd love to see that. We keep making up topics, which is fine. We'll continue to do that based on questions that we get and issues we see. But it's also nice to have some folks offer up some topics too. Lovely. Well, I will check one more time with Catherine. Catherine, do you see anything else?
I do not.
Okay. Well, that being that, I think we're pretty, well, we've got 5 minutes left, but we'll wrap it up here. So I'll just say thanks again. Our next grant management training session is going to be September 15th. So the same link and all that. And then we'll also have scheduled, at least tentatively, our IAC meeting, our next commission meeting on September 22nd. But do check our website for updates on that and for any meeting materials and that sort of thing. So thanks to everybody, and hope your September is off to a good start and you're all ready for some college and pro football to be starting. And we'll talk to you in a couple weeks, and reach out in the meantime if you need anything. All right, bye everybody. Have a good one.